Welcome to RuralStrong, where we talk real challenges and bold solutions in rural economic development. I'm your host, Joe Barker. Let's get into it. Welcome to RuralStrong, and we have a special guest this morning, a lady that I've known for several years and have great respect for. We have Brooxie Carlton as our guest, and Brooxie serves as the Assistant Commissioner of Community and Rural Development for the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. And first of all, welcome, Brooxie, and tell us a little bit about your role at the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development.
Thanks, Joe. It's great to be here today. I think we've been working together for about 20 years now, since I was an intern at ECD when you were here. So the Department of Economic and Community Development has kind of two different sides. One of those is the business development side, and that part of the department recruits industry to Tennessee, helps manufacturers grow in Tennessee, helps create jobs in Tennessee. And then I'm over the community development side, and our goal is basically to help the communities get ready for industrial and economic development. So we do a wide range of things to make sure that the communities have what they need to recruit jobs. We do basic public infrastructure projects, including water and sewer projects. We help communities find and develop their industrial property. We do strategic planning with communities. We do downtown development so that there's a place to build that community in our towns and cities across the state. And just have a huge wide range of programming to make sure that the communities can take that next step and do economic development and job creation.
You know, Brooksy, as I talk to my colleagues across the nation and we talk about how involved our states are in rural economic and community development, I'm always excited to talk about Tennessee and the focus and investment that they've put into our rural areas. And in your career there, I know you've seen this really grow. Tell us a little bit about the state of Tennessee and their commitment to rural and economic community development.
Sure. We have been fortunate. The Community Development Division at ECD, we have a ton of federal money that we manage that comes in from for broadband expansion, that basic public infrastructure. But we also, in the last several years, have really been able to utilize some state funding. The state legislature appropriates funding for us every year, and they have since 2016. So we've been able to develop new programs with that. Every couple of years, we go out into the community and ask them what's going on, what do they need more of, what programs aren't helpful for them anymore, so that we make sure we're really responsive to those. But because we do that, because we monitor the programs that we have and we're able to show a return on investment to the legislators, they've been very generous about making sure that we have funding in place. The Rural Development Office was started in 2016 under Governor Haslam and Commissioner Boyd. And since then, I think we started the first year with $6 million. And I think the next year we got $10 million. And this year, for the fiscal year that starts in July of 2025, we'll have about $47 million of state funding that we're able to invest in our communities through our Rural Development Office.
And that's quite a focus from state government on our rural areas. And as you go around, Brooksy, and talk to the rural communities, as you just mentioned, and hear about their needs and challenges, what are some of the greatest needs that you hear as you speak to our local elected officials?
I think right now there's a lot of uncertainty around federal funding and what's going to happen with federal funding. And so there are just a lot of questions about that. So one of the big things we're hearing right now is that communities need help navigating that. They need somebody that can translate what's coming out of DC for them. They need to help to figure out if one of the programs that they planned on using or are using is cut or canceled. How can we be creative about finding a new funding source for them? They need somebody that kind of understands how the feds work, so that we can help them just navigate and continue their progress. Kind of in a bigger picture, in general, what do we hear from the communities? Flexible funding is always really important. We try to do asset-based strategic planning for the communities and realize that not every community is going to want to do industrial site development. Maybe they don't have good property available for industrial sites. Maybe they're focused on tourism or outdoor recreation or some other industry, and they want to do something different. So we try to make sure that some of our funding sources, at least, can be really flexible and meet the needs of each individual community. And then I think capacity building is a big area that we hear about a lot. We have new mayors every couple of years in Tennessee with, several hundred cities and 95 counties. There's always new leadership that needs economic development training, that needs to understand what economic development is, what community development is. And so we also do a lot of technical assistance and training and just going out and meeting with those elected officials and making sure that they understand what's available, not just from ECD, but from all the partners that we work with on the state and the federal level.
And I know in all the programs that you oversee, there's been a real emphasis in the state on targeting distressed counties. And I know our listeners would be interested in hearing, number one, the process in, designating a county as distressed, and how the state of Tennessee really focuses on those distressed counties to move them out of that category.
The distressed counties are classified every year, and the distressed counties are the bottom 10% of all the counties in the nation when you rank those counties based on unemployment level, poverty rate, and per capita income. So we don't want to be the bottom 10% in anything. So it has been a focus really since we started the Rural Development Division in 2016 under Governor Haslam, and Governor Lee has just stepped it up even more to look at what counties fall in that bottom 10%. What is the cause of that? Is it that they have high unemployment rates or high poverty rates? And then what can we do to move those counties out of distress? For fiscal year 2025, we have 9 counties that are considered distressed. And that is down from, I think, 2011, we had 26 counties that were distressed. When Governor Haslam when Governor Lee ran for office, there were 19 distressed counties. And so we've consistently been able to move those up. And one of the other good things that we like to point out is that we've been moving all the counties up. We didn't just move the distressed counties into the at-risk status, which is the next classification. We've also moved a lot of the at-risk counties up into the transitional category. So we have a goal every year that 70% of our rural counties will move up in the ranking, and we've been fairly consistently hitting that goal to make sure all the counties are moving up. And so while we focused a lot on the distressed counties, we're focusing on all the rural counties as well.
And there's been a huge emphasis in Tennessee on locating jobs in these rural counties, and I think our listeners would be interested in hearing, the effort that's been put forth and the numbers that are out there on the number of jobs that have been created statewide in our rural counties.
Yeah, we have done a great job of focusing some of our incentives on the rural counties and on the distressed counties. We actually use a slightly different ranking at ECD. So one of the things that we classify the counties into tiers. So tier 4 are those, all the distressed counties are in tier 4 counties. And then some of the at-risk counties are in that designation. And if a job creation project comes to us and is creating jobs in one of those communities, the tier 4 community, they can get extra kind of a bump up in their incentives. So we look at what we would typically do in that county and then bump it up 50% for distressed counties and 35% for at-risk counties. So one of the goals that we've had is to recruit more of our projects to the rural communities. And so far in calendar year 2025, 45% of our job announcements have been in rural communities. We're really excited about that. And last year, our number was over 50% of those jobs, and we've consistently just been hitting 45 to 50% every year. So that little extra incentive bump. And it kind of helps when a company is coming and saying, we want to locate somewhere in Tennessee. And we can say, great, welcome. We'd love to have you. If you're creating great jobs, we'd love to see you here. But what we can do is offer you a little bit more per job that you are planning to create if you locate in one of these counties. And sometimes that, combined with all the things that we've done to help the communities get ready to land the jobs, is enough to get them to say, oh yeah, I can look at that community. I can create jobs there just as well as I could create them in one of our urban communities.
So, with the incentive structure in Tennessee, then there's definitely a focus on these rural communities where that company can actually receive more incentives if they go in some of these rural communities.
Yeah, that's right. 50% is a pretty good bump up for some of those communities. Our average cost per job is usually around $4,000 a job. So, that can mean an additional couple $1,000s per job if the job is being created in one of our distressed counties.
That is absolutely amazing. I tell you, I probably hear as much at our organization and from our rural communities about housing. And of course, to create affordable housing, you've got to have infrastructure. Is there a special strategy that the state of Tennessee has, or is this just one of those things that is really tough to deal with?
It's really tough to deal with. We are trying. Housing is something we hear across the board. I live in Nashville, and housing is a problem in Nashville, but it's a problem in our distressed counties. It's a problem in suburban counties. Everybody needs more housing, and nobody has figured out a great way to do it. There's one thing that we're doing in your region, Joe, is we're doing at least a housing market assessment for each county there. So with the Blue City project, creating 5,000 plus jobs in West Tennessee, in communities that haven't seen population growth sometimes for the last 5 decades, we knew that housing was going to be a big issue. There haven't been a lot of new housing starts in those communities, in some cases in a really long time. So we have gone in and looked at what can we do to understand the situation. So where does a community have infrastructure that can be used? Where is water and sewer already located? Are there some places where we can do infill? Maybe there is some abandoned housing that could be torn down and those properties redeveloped, or maybe there's an area that's already in town that's already served by infrastructure that could be developed. What are some of the policies that the communities have in place to attract developers? How can those be streamlined so that we can, make it easier for developers? If a developer is looking just all over West Tennessee and they go to one community and they have nothing on their website about developing housing, then it's just as easy for them to go to the next community and look at their website. And if they make it easier, they're probably the ones that are going to get the development. So we're looking at just in general, all across the West Tennessee right now is where we're focused to see what are some policies that can be put in place, where is some development kind of easy to do, where can we get the community some education so they know how to work with developers and know what needs to be in place to encourage housing. So there are some things that we're trying to do. We've got tons of partners that we're working with on that initiative, but it's still really difficult to do housing development.
And there's a lot of moving parts, Brooksy, in rural economic development, and many times I say it's like putting the pieces of a puzzle together. Uh, how important is it to a rural community to have planning as part of one of those central pieces of that puzzle?
We think planning is really important. Occasionally, when we propose a new program or expand a program that's for planning, we get some pushback and say, it's time for us to actually do something. There's lots of planning going on, and we try to recognize that and to say, okay, this community has planned and planned and planned. Let's take it to the next step and do implementation. But what we usually find is there's not a good plan in place. People don't understand what they have, what they're missing, the steps they can take to get there. And so having a good plan in place, whether it is a plan for the 3-star program that encompasses kind of all the community development that's going on in the community, or it's a very specific land use plan that the community's had the same land use plan for 20 years and they need to get it updated and need to understand what are the current land uses, what are the future land uses, where does the community need to expand, or what can they do with the land that's in their community. And so we think it's really, really important. And we think that also each plan needs to have implementation steps. It needs to outline what the community does next. So you don't have those plans that just sit there and then, 5 or 10 years from now need to be updated because there hasn't been any activity.
Brooksy, when I first went to work for ECD under Governor Bredesen, I remember one of the first conversations I had with the governor about our rural communities is he asked me how many of our communities have a plan, and I thought maybe I misunderstood him, and I said, "Sir," and he says, "No, how many of our communities actually have a plan?" And I told him that I felt certain that a few of them did, but probably the vast majority didn't. And I never will forget what he said. He looked at me and he says, "Joe, I know of no business that's ever been successful that didn't have a plan. How in the world can we expect our communities to be successful without a plan?" And I think what you've said certainly emphasizes that is, you've got to develop that plan, develop your priorities, and work off that plan.
Yeah, I think that was really great guidance that got us started in the right direction. And honestly, since then, we've been making sure that each county has a plan. We're doing asset-based strategic planning, so really focused on what's already going well for communities or what they have in their communities or what they can build off of. But we require through our 3-star program that each county has a plan. It includes at least 3 short-term goals and at least 3 long-term goals, that there are implementation steps for each of those goals, and that there is somebody assigned to follow up and make sure that the next steps get taken. And we found that even with that in place, it can be really difficult to keep people focused on the plan, but at least there's something that we can always go back to. And a lot of our programs will ask, is this in your 3-star plan? Is this something that your whole community has agreed is important? And then we have, like I said earlier, we have some grant funding that's available to the communities to help them implement their plans.
Now, you're even still a young lady, but you're a veteran up there and in the field of economic and community development. And let's talk a little bit about how important it is for our rural communities to have collaboration and for city and county governments to work together. My experience, Brooksy, has been that, no matter how small a county might be, if the local governments work together, their chances for success go up dramatically. And I'd just like to get your thoughts on how important it is for local governments to work together.
There's kind of that tired of analogy of or discussion of the Friday night lights and the people don't get along because of something that happened 10 years ago on a football field or something like that. And I think communities are also starting to get tired of that and realize that that is not helpful to making progress in their communities. We've seen a lot of communities really be able to figure it out, even if the personalities clash, even if it's not something they want to do, communities are really understanding that they have to work together. If you have a population of, some of our counties have 7,000 people in them, some of them have 15,000 people in the county, that you really have to work together to make progress, that a small town of just a couple hundred people can't do economic development, can't recruit a business on their own. They have to make sure that they are looking at a workforce region and looking at a bigger picture about what they can bring a company rather than just their 200 or 500 people that are in their city limits. So we've been able to see some really good progress. Even outside of just one county, a couple of counties coming together to hire an economic developer or to do a workforce study and understand how the workforce is impacted by the population of a couple of different counties or a whole region. So we've been excited to see communities start to work together and start to form regional groups and realize that they have to get over some of the difficulties of working with other communities, other counties, and we've been excited to see that.
And following that same line of thought, how important do you think it is for a region to work together?
I think if a region can figure it out, they are going to show, they're going to be an example for other regions all across the country. They're going to see a lot of success and it's going to pay off. We acknowledge that it's not easy to do, that, the paper is going to say this company landed in X community and they're the ones that are going to get the credit for it, and that's hard for a mayor who may be up for re-election next year to send it to their neighbor or to make sure it happens in their neighboring community, recognizing that it benefits them as well. So we know it's not something that's easy to do, but if a region can figure it out and can have a united front and can look at the data on a regional level and work together to recruit companies, to do community development projects, to figure out, maybe housing goes better here, but the schools go better here and the industrial property is best suited here. And if we look at that big picture, it's going to benefit all three of those areas. And the communities that figure that out will be the ones that are successful.
Well, and as you know, it creates that synergy where, we're stronger as parts of a whole than we are as individuals. In just a few minutes we have left, I know you're the point person for the state of Tennessee on a couple of regional commissions, the Appalachian Regional Commission and the Delta Regional Authority. And I would just like to get your thoughts on how important you think that those regional commissions are to rural communities.
We have those two, ARC and DRA, those two regional commissions that impact communities in Tennessee. ARC serves 52 counties in East and Middle Tennessee, and DRA serves the 21 counties in West Tennessee. And there are a couple of other regional commissions out there. There's Northern Borders. There's just a few others. And they are really targeted to areas where there are more distressed counties, where the poverty is high, where for some reason those areas have been left out of the progress that the rest of the country has seen. And so it's a great opportunity to have a specific focus on, this is part of the reason why these communities have not developed. So let's have staff, let's have a budget, let's have people from the state, local, and federal governments that can partner together to really focus on developing these areas. I will say that they're at risk right now of not being funded next year. Kind of all the regional commissions, either their funding significantly cut or or completely cut. And so I think it's a good time for those organizations to show how they've made impact. And I think if you look at the things like the distressed counties, if you look ARC on their maps, their distressed counties are red. And you can look at a map from 50 years ago when the ARC started, or more than 50 years ago when the ARC started, to 20 years ago to today, and you can see that the number of distressed counties has gone down dramatically. And I think those organizations and the people that work with those organizations showing that change and how those organizations have contributed to that change makes a good case for why those organizations should continue.
Well, I absolutely agree because, many times they're able to complete a project, their funding, and certainly we all support our regional commissions. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot. If you could give one piece of advice to our listeners, whether they're in Tennessee or all across the country that are in rural economic development, what would be your piece of advice to them that would help make them successful?
I think, I hope this isn't a cop-out, but I think that understanding your community is really important. We talked about it several times that asset-based planning is important to communities. And it could be a community that's, just over the county lines, but has a totally different economic development focus. And I think there's a recognition now that, industrial development is economic development, tourism is economic development, entrepreneurship is economic development, outdoor recreation is economic development. And there are several different ways to create jobs and create economic impact in your community. And each community really needs to spend some time figuring out what their niche is and how they can develop it. And if you're in Tennessee, give us a call and we can help you figure out how to develop it and how to get it funded.
Well, Brooxie is a great resource, and I do want to say if you've got a question for Brooxie or would like for her to get in contact with you to talk about a specific program in Tennessee, you can reach us at RuralStrong@gmail.com. We welcome your comments. We welcome your suggestions. And Brooxie, we really appreciate you taking the time from your busy day to be with us. And again, I want to applaud you and your staff for all your hard work. And thanks again for being on Rural Strong.
Thank you, Joe. It was great to talk with you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on Rural Strong. If you found this helpful, share it and follow the show for more insights from rural leaders making a real difference. Until next time, stay rural strong.